A verdict of obedience on a disobedient Muslim wife. This story was written in English and translated into Arabic by Dr. A. Ahmed. Copyright. All rights are reserved. All characters in this book are fictitious, and any resemblance to real people, living or dead, is purely coincidental. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author except by a reviewer who may quote brief paragraphs in a review to be printed in a newspaper, general magazine, school journal, or university article. This is a love story about 3 Muslim girls who are subjected to gross injustice, severe violence, and abhorrent persecution by Muslim men, religious leaders, Sharia court judges, and police officers in the Islamic community and the religion of Islam and its hostile, hateful, and abusive teachings against women's rights, which are innumerable. For example, beating of women, child marriage, circumcision of small Muslim girls, which is also known as female genital mutilation or FGM, slaying of women in honor killings, inequality between males and females in inheritance, testimony in court, marriage, divorce, men's guardianship over women, controlling their lives and destinies as if they are minors, physically handicapped or mentally retarded, and forcing them to wear the abaya, veil, hijab, niqab, or the humiliating black burqa as if they are scary ghosts. Many Islamic countries prevent women from going to schools and work, and they are forbidden to practice any kind of sports, and they are not allowed to go to gymnastic, beach, swimming pool, cinema, or theater. And none of them is allowed to leave the house without her husband or with the muharram man. The woman is forbidden to marry, such as her father or brother. They are also not allowed to fall in love with men before marriage or choose their future husbands or life partners. The story is about the 3 innocent Muslim girls, Intisar, Firdaus, and Mona. Chapter 26. The Deadly Truth of Life Behind Bars in Sudan. In the footsteps of our tragic tale, we are now about to enter a place that no one wants to enter except by coercion from the powerful arm of law enforcement police officers. The evil old man Mr. Osman the Good, the notorious criminal the magician Omar, half-brother of Farida, Intisar, Firdaus, and Osman, and the beautiful nurse Zakia are captured by Sergeant Abdul Nabi and 4 brave police officers. Then they were taken to the dungeon and thrown behind bars. Before we go there and find out what happened to the criminals, we must tell the reader some important information that we have collected about Al-Gadaref Central Prison. Whether the suspect is innocent or guilty, he will face the following problems inside Sudanese prisons. When the suspect is arrested, the first problem he will face is the police interrogators. These are well-trained policemen whose primary duty is to extract the truth from the suspect. They were trained to strike him on every part of his body without spilling a drop of blood or killing him. We are told that these ruthless interrogators have been trained in all kinds of ruthless interrogation techniques in Italy and then mastered all the brutality of the world mafia gang. They are much tougher than the Spanish Inquisitors and Russian Gestapo, the terrorists of ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and the Nazi genocide war criminals of Adolf Hitler. After that, the suspect is handed over to the doctors to check whether he is fit to be imprisoned or not. Any suspect who narrowly escapes a brutal beating by police interrogators is supposed to be declared unfit for prison and should be sent to the intensive care unit at the nearest hospital. Yet the doctors, without examining him, would declare him fit for imprisonment. The reason for this is that the corrupt doctors will appear to be compromising with the suspect's family. If the suspect happens to be from a wealthy family and his family members are willing to pay what they demand, they will re-examine his state of health and declare him unfit for imprisonment. In this case, he will spend most of his sentence in the hospital. After these doctors, the suspect must confront the prison guards. These guards do the least evil to the suspect. Their main task is to pick up the suspect for every valuable thing that happened to be with him when he was arrested. For example, if he has some cash, a nice watch, a gold chain, or other jewelry, and a nice shirt, pants, or shoes, the guards will confiscate these items. The suspect will not take it back later whether he is declared innocent, guilty, or ever seen again. The suspect would then be dragged or carried away by the guards and thrown into a barracks. Now the suspect has reached the end of his journey from the free world to the dungeon world. Among the suspects and prisoners there are those who call themselves bodyguards. I hope that no one reading this story will be deceived by the good reputation that the prison bodyguards call themselves. These guards are criminals and doing criminal acts. It is these criminals who have been tried and convicted. Most of them are serving life sentences or on death row while awaiting their turn to be executed by hanging, beheading, or stoning. So, they lost all hope in life and their hearts turned to stone. They are tougher than police interrogation. They don't care if their victim dies at their hands. When the guards bring a new suspect inside the barracks, these bodyguards beat him mercilessly. Then they will inquire about his crime. If his charge is related to money, he will be the object of their interest as long as he is in prison. For example, bodyguards favor crimes such as income tax, social deception by a lawyer or witch doctor, murder, kidnapping, rape, robbery, drug trafficking, violence against women, child abuse, and bribery. With their agents out of jail, the bodyguards will make a deal with the suspect's family. If the family refuses to pay for their protection service, the suspect will be mercilessly beaten day and night. In addition to the bodyguards, the suspect will face the problem of sleeping in the barracks. Each barracks would be packed with 200 to 300 suspected and convicted prisoners. No bed, sheet, mattress, or pillow is allowed inside the barracks. Besides, the suspect must spend the night biting mosquitoes and other vampire insects. Inside the prison there are millions of flies during the day and billions of mosquitoes at night. The last problem the suspect faces at night is where he sleeps. There are good places and bad places to sleep. The bad place is near the toilet where the suspect has to spend his time in jail to inhale the smell of urine and feces that spread a foul odor of dirty toilets in prison. They are dirty as hell. The cleaners are afraid to death to enter the prison and clean the bathrooms for fear of dangerous criminals. The prisoners were divided into suspects and convicts. Convicts are prisoners who have been tried, convicted, and sentenced to prison, while the suspects are the ones who are in pretrial detention. Sometimes the suspect spends more than a year on remand. During this long waiting period, the accused is not entitled to obtain prison uniform, shoes, soap, toothbrush, toothpaste, tea, or coffee from the prison authority. It is the responsibility of his family to provide him with these necessities of life. If he happens to be unemployed, an outcast, or a beggar who has no one to take care of him outside the prison, he will remain as long as he is in the pretrial stage without these basic needs of life. In addition, the new suspects will be forced to sleep with suspects who have not showered, washed their clothes, or brushed their teeth in several months. After this brief introduction, it is now time for us to follow in the footsteps of the two evil criminals who were caught in Badria's house by 5 policemen and took them by force and threw them inside the cell. Therefore, after the course of our story, we must now enter the central prison of Gadaref City to see what happened to Mr. Osman Al-Taib, Omar Ibrahim Mustafa Jaber, and the nurse, Zakia Karamala. At first, the beautiful nurse was mistaken by the neighbors for a high-ranking prostitute whom the dirty old man had brought with him to spend the night in his arms. Therefore, when she appeared in her short dress and half-exposed sexy body, the audience cursed her with many insults and accusations. Some bad teen boys reached out to her body and groped her and did other ugly things to her big ass. They would have gang-raped her in broad daylight had it not been for the 5 policemen who used their batons and scared them away and rescued her. After that, Sergeant Muhammad Abd al-Nabi and his 4 policemen took the 3 suspects to the police headquarters. On the way, journalist Shams el-Din was busy taking pictures for his newspaper. He photographed the suspects in a variety of ways and in different situations. Take their photos individually, 2 by 2, collectively, and with others. Mr. Osman Al-Taib was filmed when he was found hiding inside the toilet, with his hands tied while he was kneeling between the nurse and the magician when he was taken by 2 policemen and thrown into the police van, and when he was taken out of the van and thrown into the lockup room. Another picture shows Mr. Osman Al-Taib when Sergeant Muhammad Abdul Nabi slapped him. There was a misunderstanding between the sergeant and the old geezer. The former asked the latter if he had bribed Inspector Hussein and thus released the magician criminal. The old man, because of the disease of his bitten lips, could not answer the question. The sergeant regarded the old man's silence as a challenge to his authority. In accordance, he slapped him with all his might until the old goat turned upside down. Sergeant Muhammad Abd al-Nabi was about to kick the old hyena with his shoe had it not been for nurses' intervention. The secretary Zakia remained loyal to her evil employer even after his arrest and continued to defend him and speak on his behalf until they reached the detainee. The two male criminals were sent to the men's jail and the female suspect was sent to the women/s detention. Since that time, the vile old man has lost contact with his female mouthpiece. Despite this, Sergeant Muhammad Abd al-Nabi had asked journalist Tariq Shams al-Din Haddad not to publish that photo in the newspaper, which shows him slapping the old geezer with all his might. Shams al-Din also filmed the sixth criminal, the magician Omar, in various locations. Mona refused to approve 4 of her photos. She asked the journalist not to show those photos to the public. But she asked him to give her those 4 photos so that she could keep them in her own album. The pictures showed the innocent girl taking revenge on her kidnapper and rapist. One of the pictures was taken when she slapped him in the face, another when she kicked him on the head, another when she hit him with her heels on the back, and the last when she was spitting in his face. When the group reaches the police headquarters, they find that Inspector Hussein was responsible. However, the sergeant and his policemen refused to greet him or speak to him. They also refused to hand over the suspects to him. They demanded that Inspector Yassin, assistant to Inspector Hussein, take over the case and file a complaint against him. There is an old enmity and hatred between Inspector Yassin and Inspector Hussein. The enmity and hatred worsened when Inspector Hussein the Great achieved his final victory by arresting Alwaj and his gang. Therefore, when Inspector Yassin learned of Inspector Hussein's involvement in the crime of bribery and rape, he immediately informed his superiors of the matter. The senior officials of the police department ordered Inspector Yassin to take the following steps against Inspector Hussein. He must be stripped of his police uniform immediately. He must be charged with bribery and corruption. To stop working as a police inspector immediately. He must be imprisoned in the headquarters until further orders are issued. Inspector Yassin immediately carried out the above orders against the suspected Inspector Hussein. After that, he took the statements of the good citizen Walid Hamza and the first innocent girl Mona Salah al-Din and allowed them to leave. And returned to their homes. Nurse Zakia was immediately interrogated and released when the police discovered that she was not involved in the rape and bribery crimes. She went straight from the police headquarters to the airport and back to her home city, Khartoum. In the meantime, the kidnapping and rape criminals, Mr. Osman Al-Tayyib and Omar Ibrahim Mustafa Jaber, were transferred to prison and placed on the waiting list of investigators. When it was their turn, the police guards took the old man first. Since the arrest, the old rapist has had a serious communication problem. He became like a lame old geezer who lost his cane, or a short-sighted, aged and decrepit man who lost his spectacles. He had lost his notebook and pen in Omar's house, and after entering prison, he lost his private nurse and personal secretary Zakia. For some time, he had been managing his life without these basic means of communication. In the confinement room, most of the suspects were either drunk or unconscious due to the brutal beating of the policemen. When it was his turn, he saw 2 huge prison guards entering the lockup room. They quickly grabbed his hands and dragged him into the interrogation room. Chapter 27. 2 evil suspects confront the ruthless interrogators. The police interrogation room is slightly larger than a public telephone booth. There's a small chair and a table. The 2 police guards brought in the evil old man and handcuffed him in 2 corners. The old goat has become like the crucified criminal of the Islamic State Caliphate. Then they turned off the lights and left. The small room became as dark as a tomb. For half an hour, the old hyena is left hanging in this position. At first, he thought it was a punishment for his crime. He hoped this punishment wouldn't be long. He is afraid that he will die hanging like a chicken on a rope. Then, he heard that the door to the room was opened and the sounds of the footprints of some creatures entered. He tried to see who entered, but he couldn't. His troubled mind told him that the room was a haunted place full of ghosts. Such a thought terrified the old man, who was not used to such darkness. Outside prison, his life was full of lights and fun. He used to spend his time in beautiful villas, mansions, five-star hotels in foreign countries, and fly planes from one country to another in business class. When the old geezer remembered the outside world, he started to shed hot tears. However, the rapist man did not remember the evils he had committed against the second innocent girl Firdaus and did not repent of his many evil deeds. While the old man was hanging in that miserable state, he suddenly saw a sharp light focus on his eyes. He experienced severe pain in his eyes. He felt like a scorching flame ignited in his eyes. He tried to close them, but it felt like they were filled with hot chili powder. He pulled his hands to protect his eyes, but he couldn't free them from the ropes. As he struggled with his eyes and hands, he felt some rough hands grab his jacket, shirt, and trousers and strip them all from his body. He then heard a loud voice asking him, "Did you bribe Inspector Hussein to acquit criminal Omar Ibrahim Mustafa Jaber of his involvement in the crime of kidnapping and rape?" The old man, though trembling with fear, remained silent with his mouth shut. The harsh voice repeated the question 3 times, but the old man did not answer. After that, he felt as if a sharp sword or electric shock had cut his stomach and split it into 2 halves. The pain was so terrible that the old fox tried to open his mouth and scream, but this also caused great pain in his diseased lips. Tears flowed from his eyes. He felt another heavy blow to his stomach, followed by a kick and a slap. At least 3 people continued to beat the old wolf continuously for 10 minutes. Each of them focused on one part of his body. One specialized in slapping, the other in kicking, and the other in caning. The third investigator focused on the cheeks, ears, mouth, and head. Therefore, he caused more pain than the others. The other 2 interrogators divided the rest of the body between them into 2 equal parts. 10 minutes later, they stopped at the same time. The old man felt his body on fire. Every member of his body was burning with unbearable pain. Once again, he heard the harsh voice asking him the same question. His heart longed for the beautiful nurse, Zakia. In that unbearable torture, he remembered the second innocent girl, Firdaus. How she suffered unbearable pain when he brutally raped her. He knows that now God will compensate him for the evil he did to her. However, the evil old man does not repent of his sins. When the question was repeated 3 times and the old hyena could not answer it, the beating resumed again. It continued for another 10 long minutes. When they stopped, the old man felt his body float on molten lava of an erupted volcano. One of the police interrogators said, "I think this old wolf is deaf and his mouth has gone dumb. Let's try with him another time." Therefore, he turned off the sharp light and the ruthless interrogators left the room. The old man's evil spirit is now suspended between hell and earth. He could feel a fire burning in every part of his body. He longed for death to save him from his torment. He wished that those interrogators would come back and shoot him in the head and kill him and save him from his unbearable torment. But this desire was not fulfilled. After that, he began to feel himself plunging into a deep ocean of darkness. Darkness overtook him and he passed away. The same 2 police guards returned and carried away the old man's corpse. Without trying to find out if he was alive or dead, the guards took his dead body to the confinement room and laid it on a hard floor. He became like a dead corpse ready to be buried. The 6th criminal, the magician Omar, pretended to be so ill that he could neither stand nor speak. He raised his hand when he heard the 2 prison guards calling his name, Omar Ibrahim Mustafa Jaber. Then the 2 guards approached him and ordered him to his feet. He tried to stand up, but his strength failed him. They grabbed his hands and forced him to his feet. When they let go of his hands, he spontaneously fell on his face and seriously injured himself. He had broken some of his front teeth and his forehead was also bleeding. The police guards, ignoring his injuries, turned his body over and dragged him out of the lockup room on his feet until they reached the interrogator's room. On the way, his head kept bouncing up and down like a soccer ball and hitting everything. His body, which had been severely beaten and damaged by the police interrogators at his initial detention, suffered unbearable pain. He started screaming and crying all the way. The two prison guards did not heed his cries. In this inhuman way, the criminal Omar was dragged for 6 minutes until they reached the police interrogator's room. After that, they handcuffed him, turned off the lights, and left. The magician Omar, being a jailbird, as a habitual goon, knew what would come next. So, his mind became busy devising some tricks to escape from the harsh beatings of the investigators. Moreover, he kept his eyes closed tightly. Half an hour later, he heard people's footsteps entering the darkened room. Turn on the sharp light with Omar's eyes closed. He started opening them gradually until he saw the ruthless interrogators standing in front of him like death demons. His main concern is to avoid trick questions. But they surprised him with an unexpected question. Why did you escape from prison? The first question is too tricky for Omar to answer correctly. Sir, the magician said, the police inspector Hussein told me to go home because someone asked him to release me. The investigators are not satisfied with the answer, and hence the brutal beating started immediately. Omar suffered more unbearable pain than the old man because his ailing body had not yet overcome the pain of the previous beating. He started screaming loudly. 10 minutes later, the painful beating stopped, and the question was repeated. The criminal kidnapper and rapist said, crying, "Sir, that my younger sister's husband bribed Inspector Hussein, and I was released." The answer is not acceptable because Omar is still trying to justify his escape. Wherefore, the beating resumed again. When the interrogators stopped 10 minutes later, he felt as if his body had been stabbed and pierced by hundreds of sharp knives, swords, and spears. He's breathing hard now. The difficult question was asked again. My little sister's husband, who is the well-known wealthy man, Syed Osman Al-Taib, wanted me to appear before the judge of the Sharia court. If I hadn't attended the trial, he wouldn't have won the case against his disobedient Muslim wife, who is my small sister Firdaus. That's why he bribed Inspector Hussein and released me. This is no excuse for you to escape from prison. I'm sorry, sir. I will not run away again. How much money did your rich brother-in-law pay to Inspector Hussein as a bribe to get you released? It's a blank check. Inspector Hussein was told to write in it any amount of money he wished to receive. Do you admit that you are the sixth criminal, the magician Omar, the fugitive who participated in the heinous crime of kidnapping and rape that was committed against the innocent girl? Yes, I am, sir. After that, the 2 confession papers were brought, and he was then asked to confess that he had written and signed them. Omar also admitted that the detainee, Shakash, is indeed a criminal, but he did not participate in the crime of kidnapping and rape of the innocent girl, Mona. However, the police authority preferred to continue detaining Shakash as a dangerous criminal. Then the investigators inquired about Mr. Osman Al-Taib and learned from Omar that he is neither deaf nor dumb, but he suffers from a disease in the lips from a bee bite that prevents him from speaking. When they were satisfied with the confessions of the sorcerer Omar, 2 of them carried his battered and broken body to the dungeon and then returned the body of the evil old monster, Mr. Osman Al-Taib, who had already been badly damaged. The old geezer, who is like a zombie, came out of a grave and is still alive. This time, instead of tying him up, they made the old beast sit on a chair. Then they gave him some paper and a pencil. One of the interrogators asked him, "Do you admit that you bribed Police Inspector Hussein Hassan Hassanain and thus helped the criminal Omar Mustafa Jaber escape from prison?" The old man wrote the following reply. I had asked Inspector Hussein to release him for 3 days only because I needed him to testify before Judge Abdul Mohsen Taha in the Sharia court in Gadaref city regarding my dispute with the family of my 4th wife, who is his sitter Firdaus Ibrahim Mustafa Jaber. When his response was read out loud, another police interrogator responded angrily and slapped the old man. The slap was so strong that the old goat, the chair, and the table turned upside down. All these things were rearranged, and the question was repeated. The old man did not reply. So, the tough cop assumed he had become temporarily deaf from the slap. To overcome this difficulty, he wrote the question on a piece of paper and presented it to him. This time the old man wrote a satisfactory answer. Since you knew that Omar Ibrahim Mustafa Jaber was involved in a crime of kidnapping and rape, why did you bribe Inspector Hussein and ask him to release him? When the old man read the above question, he hesitated for a moment and then wrote the following answer. I was told that he had participated in a serious crime, but I did not know what the crime was. When the answer was read aloud, the old man felt as if a cricket pat had hit his face. So, everything, including the voracious hyena or the fearsome old beast, is turned upside down. This time the evil old man flew into the air and fell 2 meters away. All things upside down with the old man were rearranged again. The answer has been cancelled in red ink and marked with an X, which indicates that it is a wrong answer. Accordingly, the correct and honest answer was requested. Again, a correct answer was given this time. Another trick question was asked. What was your goal when you bribed Inspector Hussein and helped a notorious criminal like Magician Omar escape from prison? The old man knew that he had already answered that question. Therefore, the first thought that occurred to him was to leave the question unanswered. So, he put the pencil on the paper and waited for the investigator's reaction. But not answering a question is considered the worst answer by these angry police interrogators. Wherefore, one of them pulled the old man's right ear, another pulled his left cheek, and then they both lifted him up. When the old man was forced to his feet, both interrogators slapped him simultaneously. He felt as if his face had been hit by 2 large stones. He fell neither backward nor forward nor sideways, but collapsed. The interrogators lifted him and put him on the chair, but he fell again. They tried to keep him sitting on the hot chair 3 times, and each time he automatically fell to the floor. When they examined his body, they discovered that he had become deaf and blind, and that his mouth was temporarily unable to speak. He became like a statue, a body without sense. So, they carried him like an old piece of wood and threw him into the dark dungeon. The next day, the badly battered and damaged bodies of the wealthy man, Osman al-Taib, and the magician criminal, Omar Ibrahim Mustafa Jaber, were transferred to the doctors in the prison clinic. Without examining their corpses, which had been badly beaten, the doctors of the clinic declared their badly damaged and rotted bodies fit for imprisonment. Therefore, their lifeless corpses were dumped like trashes into one of the crowded barracks of Al-Gadaref City Prison. Chapter 28. The Return of the Mighty Witch Doctor. Meanwhile, the great sorcerer Hajj Muhammad Abkar Morsal, the Imam of the Grand Mosque, Maulana Sheikh Marzouk, and the famous politician, Sayyid Majub al-Hilali, fled to a nearby village called Dalsa. The 3 cowards ran away when they learned from Omar's mother of the police raid on her house. She told them that 5 policemen had arrested her sick son, Omar, Mr. Osman al-Taib, and his personal secretary, Zakia. The remaining 3 criminals immediately ran away and headed to that village on foot. It took them 4 hours to get there. The fugitives told the Imam of the mosque, who is the head of the village Dalsa, that they were involved in religious, social, and political campaigns. They claimed to be doing tours in 25 villages. The Imam became happy to receive them in his village that night. He called every villager to the night prayer in the only mosque in his village. And when the news spread that the famous politician, Mr. Majub al-Hilali, the virtuous Imam of the Grand Mosque in the city of Gadaref, His Eminence Maulana Sheikh Marzouk, and the great witch doctor, Hajj Muhammad Abkar Morsal, had come to bless the village Dalsa and its people, everyone came to receive blessings and healing. The Imam of the village, due to respect and religious difference in experience and knowledge of Islam, descended from his pulpit and asked Maulana Sheikh Marzouk to lead the male believers in the evening prayer and deliver the sermon. After 5 minutes of prayer, Maulana al-Mubarak spoke about the ideal marriage in Islam that night. When he finished his sermon, many villagers came forward and kissed his hands and feet. Some of them gave him gifts and money. They also brought their children to be blessed through his righteousness and piety. His Holiness the Blessed Maulana blessed the male children by placing his hands on their heads and spitting on their faces. However, he refused to touch the bodies of female children because, as he claimed, they are impure women, lacking in religion and intellect. Therefore, the Honorable Imam does not want to defile his pure body by touching these impure little creatures. Some of the villagers drank the water that the blessed Imam used to wash his hands, arms, face, mouth, nose, ears, head, and feet during ablution. Some of the school children brought their pens, pencils, books, and notebooks and asked the blessed Imam to pass on to them his divine mercy and karama and help them succeed in their school exams. He responded to their requests by spitting on their school supplies as well. Many sick people came to the mosque to receive healing, but Maulana passed this responsibility to Hajj Muhammad. Likewise, the mighty magician put his heavy hands on the bodies of the sick male villagers and spat on the faces of the other men and then drove them away. The Imam of the village did not allow any of the females to approach the sanctuary of the mosque and desecrate it with their presence, because Islam says the woman is a wara or naked and impure creature. The next day, the village chief swore to God and the collective divorce of his 4 wives to spend an extra day in his hospitality. The fugitives, not knowing where to go next, willingly accepted the invitation. So, the chief of the village Dalsa and some rich male villagers slaughtered 3 cows, 4 lambs, 2 calves, and a camel to celebrate the pleasant surprise visit of the honorable guests. Therefore, the next day was spent eating, praying, and blessing the villagers. Then the 3 guests inquired of their generous host whether the local newspapers of Gadaref city had been delivered to the village. He told them they would come at 8 p.m. on the only bus coming from town. The 3 outlaws on the run from justice eagerly awaited the arrival of the bus and the daily newspapers. During the evening prayer, the virtuous Imam's mind is preoccupied with dark thoughts about his dear friend, Sayyid Usman al-Tayyib. What did the local newspapers write about his accusation? What happened to his dear friend in police custody? Maulana has heard many horror stories of suspects being tortured by ruthless police interrogator. Some people have experienced their bodies being burned, some had their nails pulled out, and some had to walk barefoot on hot tins. The Imam concluded that it would be a painful experience for Mr. Osman al-Tayyib, who had never faced such hardships before. The blessed Imam believes that the prison was created to house thieves, murderers, rapists, apostates, atheists, feminists, adulterers, adulteresses, gays, lesbians, Sudanese prostitutes, Abyssinian whores, and not for the greats and nobles like Mr. Osman al-Tayyib. There is no doubt that the 6th criminal, the magician Omar, will feel at home in prison when he meets his like-minded evil friends. But the rich business tycoon Mr. Osman al-Tayyib will be like a fish out of water. When Maulana's troubled mind had somehow managed to finish his evening sermon, he avoided delaying hand-kissing from the gullible villagers and rushed with his wicked friends to their assigned room. The first question they asked was whether the local newspapers had arrived. Someone promised them that he would go and find out if the bus had arrived. It took the messenger nearly half an hour before he returned with the 2 local newspapers in his hands. When he appeared at the door, the virtuous Maulana and Sayyid Majub al-Halali rushed in and snatched the newspapers from his hands. Hajj Muhammad, who could not read or write because he is illiterate and never been to school in all his life, demanded that newspapers be read aloud for him. His demand was granted, and the first newspaper was recited aloud by Maulana Sheikh Marzouk. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful, and prayers and peace be upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad. This opening statement is not part of the newspaper article, but was added by the blessed Imam. The involvement of Police Inspector Hussein Hassan Hassanain and the wealthy man, Mr. Osman al-Tayyib, in the crime of kidnapping and rape committed against the innocent girl, Mona Salah el-Din. Yesterday, 2 young men approached the newspaper and reported the lair of the mysterious 6th criminal who is known as the magician. One of the young men revealed his identity as the same good citizen who directed the police to the brothel and tavern where the heinous crime was committed against the innocent girl. He showed the newspaper 2 confession papers written and signed by the charming, mysterious criminal. In the first paper, the criminal gave full details of his involvement in the heinous crime. In the second paper, he confessed to being arrested by Police Inspector Hussein, but was released. His son-in-law, the richest man in the city, Mr. Osman al-Tayyib, has bribed the police inspector in charge of the crime with a huge amount of money. Later, Inspector Hussein arrested one of the men of Al-Wash gang, whose name was Shakash Wad al-Haram, and charged him with the crime of the magician because he wanted to cover up his involvement in bribery. The magician's real name is Omar Ibrahim Mustafa Jaber. Al-Sayed Osman Al-Tayyib and the magician Omar were held in pre-trial detention for further interrogation. But the police refused to reveal any information about the bribed Inspector Hussein. When Maulana finished reading, the faces of his two friends showed faint smiles. Haj Muhammad is the first to comment on the news. Nothing was said about us. Maulana said, before you jump to a hasty conclusion, let's hear what the other newspaper article said. And when Mr. Majub al-Halali saw Haj Muhammad's face turning to him for affirmation or denial, he began to read the other newspaper. Police Inspector Hussein Hassan Hassanain and the wealthy businessman Mr. Osman Al-Tayyib were accused of the heinous crime of rape that was committed against the innocent girl. The good citizen who still concealed his identity somehow knew the whereabouts of the mysterious magician criminal. So, he informed the police Inspector Hussein about it. However, Inspector Hussein turned the tables on the good citizen and accused him of trying to implicate an innocent person in the crime. Yet the good citizen did not give up. He went to the newspaper and reported the matter. On the advice of one of our journalists, the good citizen went and met the innocent girl. Then both of them approached a nearby police station and filed their complaints. With the help of a police sergeant named Muhammad Abd al-Nabi and his brave policemen, the magician and Mr. Osman Al-Tayyib were arrested yesterday afternoon. The magician admitted that he was released in exchange for a large bribe paid by his sister's husband, Mr. Osman Al-Tayyib, to the police inspector, Hussein. The police refused to disclose more information about Inspector Hussein. More details will be revealed tomorrow by Inspector Yassin, who has been appointed to follow up on the investigation. Haj Muhammad said happily, I believe that our good friend, Mr. Osman Al-Tayyib, tried to implicate us in the crime because he wanted us to stand with him and fight those evil boys who are trying to snatch his new underage bride from him. Maulana said you can't be sure of your assumption, we have to wait and see what the newspapers reveal tomorrow. Mr. Majub al-Halali said that it is wise for us that we should spend a few days before we return to our city. Not me. I can't stay another day in this boring village. There are no pretty girls here. Every villager is old and insane. The women are covered from head to toe like black ghosts. I would like to go back to town tomorrow. My black magic work will stop without me. Maulana said it is up to you. Haj Muhammad, it is better for you to remain concealed until the dust settles and the whole matter is over. I was told that the bus that brought the newspapers would leave for town at 5:30 in the morning. I'm leaving tomorrow morning on that bus. Maulana said it is at your peril that you go back. Haj Muhammad said, I have decided to return and trust in God and His messenger to protect me. Before leaving, the clean businessman had attended the dawn prayer in the mosque. After praying, he obtained permission from the village chief. Many young people and old people came to the bus station to see off the famous witch doctor. He spoke to them kindly with his lips, but his heart hated and despised them. They are not the type he likes to talk to or spend another day with them. Despite this, the naive villagers kissed his hands and hugged him tightly. Some of them gave him a lot of money. They all shed hot tears as the famous black magic doctor boarded the bus. The escaped criminals, Maulana Sheikh Marzouk and Saad Majub al-Halali, wished a happy journey and God's protection for their evil friend, Haj Muhammad. Thus, the greatest of all the greats of the city of Gedaref decided to take a great risk and return to his clean work. He and two fat women took their seats near the driver. Those front seats are the best places to sit. Other passengers are stuffed like sardines in cans in the back seats. The bus is authorized for 50 passengers sitting in seats and 20 passengers standing on their feet, but on that day the number reached 100. Besides them, there are their livestock and possessions such as sheep and goats, chairs and tables, sticks, bags, chickens, and children. It is an excruciating hour-and-a-half trip with many other hazards. The road is very bad, so all the passengers will be bumping up and down and sideways all the way. At 5:40 a.m., the dangerous journey began. 10 minutes later, OD driving, the bus left the village road and entered the gravel highway. So, the shaking and shiver began. Combined with this instability, the bus's tires released massive dust, burying every passenger under a hurricane of dust. It's a bumpy gravel road, and after another 10 minutes of driving, all the passengers and their animals and birds and bags and children are starting to look like creatures that had been buried under the sand and then exhumed. The bus began to climb hills, descend into valleys, cross streams, and sometimes travel under thick, thorny bushes. Those passengers sitting by the windows had their clothes and turbans torn off. Besides all those hardships, the bus stops automatically every now and then due to engine failure. To get the driver to start it again, passengers needed 10 minutes of being pushed from behind to restart the slow beast. In this way, the bus somehow managed to cover half the distance and stopped for a 15-minute break. By then, the passengers were suffering from many kinds of diseases. Some started vomiting, some complained of severe headaches, some felt dizzy, and others felt very weak and tired. All passengers disembarked to stretch their legs and relieve themselves, except for the clean businessman. He did not suffer as the other passengers suffered because of his good health and because he had the best seat. His heart longs for beautiful teenage tears. He hadn't touched the soft cheeks of a hot girl in 44 hours, and that was a long time for him. Moreover, remembered the sexy and hot girl Siham and her attractive promise. Siham is a cover-up name that Farida Ibrahim Mustafa Jaber chose to hide her identity. The pilgrim is afraid that she will come in his absence and not find him. He thinks he fell in love with her at first sight, and the hot girl also fell in love with him. So, all the hardships of the unhappy journey did not shake or weaken him. He resolved to get home by all means and open his private room to his beautiful female visitors. During the unhappy and difficult journey, the sorcerer's mind was occupied with thousands of thoughts. He began to compare the females he saw in the village to the visiting young women who came every day to his house. He had seen village girls covering their bodies from head to toe in black abayas and ugly veils. In the village girl, he could see nothing but a coffin-like creature inside a coffin. Each village girl was a female ghost who walked and talked like a zombie inside an ugly coffin. Hajj Muhammad wondered if the girls of the village had emerged from their mothers' wombs fully clothed in those hideous coffin-like clothes. In fact, he concluded that all of them will not need burial clothes when they die. The way the village girl got into the world of the living, she also had to go to the land of the dead. Hajj Muhammad knew that if he took one of the village girls by her feet, lifted her upside down, and then shook her well, he would not see any of her inner charms, such as her breasts and their nipples, thighs, hips, buttocks, underwear, and cunt. Then the pilgrim's mind ignored the ugly appearances of the village girls and began to remember the city's beauties who crowded into his house every day. Most female visitors like to wear trendy clothes that reveal their legs, thighs, hips, arms, shoulders, lips, cheeks, hair, and breasts. Sometimes even their underwear can be seen by him, especially when they get scared when they suddenly see the terrifying demonic man named Mr. Daldoom standing in front of their beautiful eyes. This is the happiest time of the notorious womanizer. The happiest time for him is when a frightened visitor falls on her back and reveals her underwear, or takes refuge in his lap and embraces him. Therefore, the kind-hearted Hajj Muhammad misses the company of those beautiful and sexy teenagers. His loving and tender heart longs for fears and tears, and his generous hands miss the soft cheeks of a teenage girl. Therefore, the pilgrim decided to reach his home on the same day, no matter how dangerous or unhappy the journey. With this determination, the great magician, Hajj Muhammad, sat patiently for the remainder of the unhappy journey. At 7:30 a.m. the bus reached its final destination. Then the mighty witch doctor took a taxi from the bus station to his home. At home, he inquired of his workers about work. He was told that many girls had come to see him on those 2 days and had returned disappointed. He was also told that some of those girls had promised to come today. When you hear this thrilling promise, Hajj Muhammad told his workers to announce to his female visitors that his clean business would resume at 9:30 a.m. on the same day. Chapter 29. The witch doctor confronts a brave virgin of paradise. At 9:30 in the morning, the notorious womanizer was lying on his big mattress and soft music started to play. That very day, the mighty witch doctor decided to add a few more things to his room. He told one of his workers to bring the incense burner and fill it with musk. When the incense burner was brought and its white smoke and sweet fragrance spread and filled the entire private room with its scent of musk, the pilgrim's spirit rose. And soon he forgot his two friends whom he had left in the village Dallas and became indifferent to their problems. He even completely forgot about his imprisoned friend, the rich business tycoon. He wants to enjoy his life and doesn't care if they all go to jail or get killed by their enemies or the police or even fall into hell and burn for eternity and beyond. Then he ordered his maid to choose the youngest and most beautiful girl from among the female visitors and invite her to him. The assistant went to the waiting room and came back with the news that a girl with the description of the witch doctor had been found, but she came with her blind father. Hajj Muhammad ordered his assistant to bring the girl alone and tell the blind father to sit in the waiting room with other guests. The hostess went and came back frustrated again because the girl's problem is related to her blind father, and therefore she cannot come alone. The womanizer does not like having a pretty teenage girl in his private room with her father. He does not mind a mother or a sister, but he is afraid of the girl coming with her father or brother because of the fear of being slain in honor killing if he touches their daughter or sister in front of them. However, when he understood that the father was blind, he agreed to let them in together. After a few seconds, the door to the private room opened from the outside. The first thing that the eyes of the compassionate man see is the big buttocks of a teenage girl. This exciting sight is enough to make Hajj Muhammad's heart jump out of his chest and reach his mouth. His eyes opened wide. The girl is wearing a tight short skirt and a blouse. She had been forced to remove her headscarf and abaya inside the waiting room. She was told that the man of clean business does not like dealing with veiled princesses. Now the Hajj can see her hips as if they were half naked. Then in one motion, the scene changed. Now the womanizer can see the thighs, legs, waist, chest, and hair of the sexy girl. She is now like a big S letter. Her chest rose high with large breasts that looked like pomegranates hidden behind her bra. Hips and thighs slightly larger than average. Her long black hair falls loosely at her back. Her golden arms were fully revealed up to the shoulders. Her hands carefully hold the walking cane of her blind father, who leans and walks with it. Then the sweet girl began to gradually retreat and return towards Hajj Muhammad. Until now, the witch doctor cannot see the girl's face, but what he actually saw is enough to captivate his heart and arouse his lust intensely. His erect penis stood like a cannon above a tank inside his white jilbab. The girl continued to back very slowly while holding her father's hand and his walking stick. Hajj Muhammad's eyes focus on the big buttocks of the girl, who approaches him step by step. The girl with a big ass set fire to the clean heart of the notorious womanizer. Big and sexy buttocks are getting closer to him 1 inch after the other. With every step the girl takes, her big buttocks move up and down. The lustful Hajj was tempted to stand up and touch those sexy buttocks and make the girl sit on his lap. Somehow the clean businessman controlled himself and waited to see her face. Her father's blind eyes were covered by large, dark black glasses. The father looks like the fearsome Lucifer, and his daughter looks like a heavenly virgin who descended from heaven to earth. Finally, the beautiful maiden was able to help her father to sit somewhere in the room and then hurried and fell at the feet of Hajj Muhammad and began kissing them with her lips. The Hajj is dying to see her face. So, he extended his merciful hands forward and touched the girl's cheeks. When his hands felt her soft cheeks, the pilgrim felt that a current was passing from the girl's cheeks to his hands and spreading like fire all over his body. Now the lustful healer was aroused to the limit. Slowly and romantically, Hajj Muhammad's hands raised the girl's face. When his eyes saw her beautiful face, his heart turned away from his body and lost his self-control. And in a moment of ecstasy, he kissed the girl completely on the lips. The girl quickly pulled her lips back. However, Hajj's hands remained stuck to her cheeks. He continued to look at the girl's incomparably beautiful face. Her beauty exceeds his expectations. From the time he began his black magic work, he had never seen such a wonderful and dazzling beauty. Her eyes are large and surrounded by crescent-shaped eyebrows. Her mouth is small and decorated with pretty lips that look like a pair of slices of pineapples. Her cheeks are a pair of apples. Her neck is long and decorated with a gold chain. The chain carries a small plane. The golden plane lands between her breasts. Her breasts are round and slightly larger than average. They're like two big pomegranates. They can be seen completely through her collar except for their nipples. Tempt Hajj Muhammad to touch the human aerodrome on which the plane lands. Her fully exposed shoulders created a magnetic force in the witch doctor's hands. Many times, he deliberately allowed his hands to slip from her sweet cheeks to her shoulders, which shine like the color of a mango. The girl again fell to his feet and kissed them. During her downfall, she finds it very difficult to hide her inner charm from his eyes. If the womanizer reaches out and lifts her short dress by an inch, he will see her small red underwear. The beautiful girl allowed the sorcerer to touch her cheeks, lips, hair, shoulders, and arms. She even let him caress her hands. He tried several times to touch other sensitive areas such as breasts and buttocks, but she stopped him. When she realized he was intoxicated with an uncontrollable sexual desire, she stopped kissing his feet and began to speak. She said in a girlish voice, "My father and I are at your mercy." Although she looks like a 16-year-old girl, her voice is like that of a 6-year-old girl. "Even I'm at your mercy, but don't bother about it now," says Hajj Muhammad. "Tell me, what is your problem?" "My father was deceived by my uncle and my cousin had deceived me." "What kind of fraud and deception?" "One is financial and the other is sexual." "Can you explain your problem in detail?" "My uncle and father inherited their deceased father's money and property. Instead of dividing the inheritance between them, they decided to stay together in partnership. My father lost his wife and his sight 12 years ago in a car accident. From that time on, my uncle started cheating on my father at work. He took advantage of my father's blindness and made him sign many financial documents. In this way, he was able to transfer all money and property to his name. When my father decided to write some of his possessions in my name, he discovered that there was nothing left in his name. Even the house we were staying in passed on to my uncle's name. My father got angry and accused my uncle of betraying him. My uncle claimed that he spent all my father's money on his medical treatment and my education. We took the matter to court and filed a lawsuit against my uncle. Unfortunately, we lost the case. My corrupt uncle had used his money, so he bribed the judge and jurymen and was acquitted. After that, we were kicked out of our house and into the streets. For some time, we were homeless and without money. However, a dear friend of my father took us to his house and gave us a small room to live in temporarily. When the beautiful girl finished her father's tragic story, she began to cry. Meanwhile, the kind witch doctor wipes away the tears falling from her soft cheeks. Then the pilgrim looked at the father. He had seen him sitting like a statue of Lord Buddha without moving or speaking or even tears falling from his blind eyes. Hajj Muhammad wondered how such a stony face could begot such exquisite beauty. He quickly turned his eyes away from the rocky face and brought them back to the beautiful girl's angelic face. "God willing, I will return all the wealth to you and your father, and I will make your uncle run through the streets like the madman Sador. Now tell me about your sexual problem with your cousin." "I'm ashamed to talk about it," said the pretty girl, still crying. "Just consider me your best friend and thus open your heart to me." The girl looked around the room and at Hajj Muhammad to make sure that there was no one else but him, her blind father, and her. The sorcerer shook his head and hands to assure the girl that there was no one but the three of them. "I have been in love with my cousin since childhood. We grew up together, played together, slept together, ate together, and studied together. We were like twins. Our souls have loved each other since we realized ourselves. My father was pleased with our friendship, and it was the desire of his heart to see us one day become husband and wife. Despite our happy friendship, my uncle was not happy with our love affair. He held me responsible for his son's repeated failures in his exams. He told me several times that his son could have done well in his exams if I had been away from him. My cousin started to believe his father and slowly started to change. Nevertheless, I continued to love him and did everything to make him happy and win back his trust and love. Unfortunately, he took advantage of my blind love for him and cheated on me with another girl and then raped me when we were alone in the house. He made me pregnant with an illegitimate child without marriage. When his father found out about my illegal pregnancy, he refused to accept the fact that his son was behind this heinous act. Unfortunately, even my cousin sided with his father and claimed he was innocent and said another boy had made me pregnant. After that, father and son kicked us out of our house. Now I am ashamed to confront society with a sex scandal. I have spoiled my father's name and added more grief to his heart. Yet my father still loves and trusts me. After our heartbreaking tragedy, my father revealed our intractable problem to one of his close friends. The friend advised him to take his illegally pregnant daughter and go to meet the mighty witch doctor Hajj Muhammad. I'm in a serious dilemma. I don't want to run away from home and leave my blind father alone. Also, if I run away, I have to escape to another city and become a prostitute there. But if I choose to stay, the neighbors can report my unlawful pregnancy to the police because it happened without an Islamic halal marriage. If I give birth to an illegitimate child in prison, the Sharia court will condemn me as an adulterer and then sentence me to stoning. Even if no one reports me to the police, you know that I cannot raise an illegitimate child in a Muslim society. When the girl finished talking about her sexual problem, she bowed her head in shame and began to cry. Hajj Muhammad also wiped some tears from his face. He looked at the father, but he saw him as before. There were no movements, tears, or words that came out of his mouth. He remained in place like a lifeless statue. He ignored the father again, but despised him this time because he showed no sympathy towards his crying daughter. Then he began to wipe the girl's tears. He enjoyed it so much, but it was the beautiful and sexy girl who stopped crying and said to him, "If you do nothing to help us out of our shame and misery, I will end my life." The Hajj replied, "I will do whatever you ask me to do. I want you to solve our financial and sexual problems." Hajj Muhammad's heart was filled with the spirit of anger and vengeance, so he raised his hand and shouted loudly, "O Daldum." Then he set his eyes on the girl to see how she would react when she saw the shadow of death unfold before her eyes. He expected her to run to her father, or jump on him and cuddle up to him and sit on his lap, or run to the toilet and lock herself inside, or fall on her back and reveal her underwear, or run from his room. Until now, none of the teenage girls had acted otherwise when they saw the scary monster Daldum suddenly appear before their eyes. However, when the fearsome beast suddenly appeared before the girl's eyes, she did nothing of this. Instead, she looked first at him and then at Hajj Muhammad, smiled at them and remained calm. The girl's normal reaction stunned Hajj Muhammad, who had never seen nor heard of the ancient stories of the witches and wizards of his ancestors. That the girl remained calm and normal when she saw the bag of darkness appear in the empty air before her. Hajj Muhammad considered the girl's lack of violent reaction a great miracle. He also began to think about the possibility if she was an ordinary human or another demonic manifestation of some kind. Daldum himself was astonished and very afraid. He quickly jumped to the conclusion that the girl herself is another demonic creature that came directly from the world of evil spirits. He might believe her if she claimed that she was his demon among the jinn, or the fairy bride of the Nile River Alginia. In order to clear his doubts, Hajj Muhammad began to inquire about the background of the brave girl. "Have you come to me before?" "No, sir." "Have you been to Faki's house before?" "Not at all." "Has anyone visited my house and then talked to you about me?" "Not all." "How did you know about me?" "I told you that a dear friend of my father had told us about you." "What is his name?" "His name is Wad Al-Kapir." "I've never heard of this name before." "I don't think he came to your house, but he probably heard about you. You are more popular and loved in the city than anyone else." Although Hajj Muhammad was not completely satisfied with her answers, he decided to stop his inquiries. His mind told him that the girl and her father had probably dried up from all human feelings because of the tremendous injustice done to them. "My faithful servant, Mr. Daldum, would you please show our sweet princesses the list of revenge?" The scary creature is still puzzled by the brave girl's strange reaction. He also considered her to be an extraordinary human or female creature who came either from the world of evil spirits or from the virgins of heaven who had descended to earth to be the sexual partner for his womanizer master. With this conclusion, he handed the list of revenge to the brave celestial girl. "What am I supposed to do with this black book, Mr. Daldoom?" said the Maiden of Heaven, smiling at him. The shadow of death remained very puzzled also by the friendly nature of the brave girl and the respectful way in which she addressed him. Since the day he found himself involved in the evil work of black magic, no young woman had spoken to him with respect. In fact, all the teenage girls who visited Hajj Muhammad hated him and hoped he would disappear or be bound by his master. But for the first time, the terrible-looking magician found a girl who smiled and spoke politely to him. "Can you pick a number at random, please?" For the first time, the fearsome beast spoke as respectfully as his evil mind would allow. The fair virgin of paradise said in a spoiled voice to Mr. Daldoom, still smiling, "If I'm not mistaken, you've given me a blank plank. So, should I guess any number and write it here?" "Please, Miss World, don't write anything on the board. The numbers are already written in it. You have to randomly pick any number between 1 and 13 and tell us." "Well," said the brave girl, smiling, "for your sake, my dear Mr. Daldoom, I chose the number 7. Again, the ugly beast was slightly moved by the sweet girl's friendly nature and her distinguished courage. This time the reason for his astonishment was the perfect way the girl kept pronouncing his strange name. Even the great wizard, Hajj Muhammad, cannot pronounce his name so perfectly. Daldoom's conclusion proved correct, and he then began to view the girl as a spiritual being who manifested itself in a beautiful human form. So, he smiled at the Virgin of Heaven and then said, "The number you have chosen is suicide, not for my sake, but rather as punishment for your uncle. Now can you tell us his full name?" "His name is Hassan Wad Al-Khair." "Hassan Wad Al-Khair number 7, Daldoom shouted very loudly. "Why did you repeat the name after me so loudly, Mr. Daldoom?" "For the spiritual servants to hear it." "Who are the spiritual servants?" "Excuse me, Princess," said Hajj Muhammad, "we usually do not like to tell people anything about our invisible servants, but for your sake I will give you some information. Our servants are invisible evil spirits who help us do our jobs without police interference. For example, your uncle caused great injustice to your father. When your father went to law, the law closed its doors on him. If your father tries to take his rights by force, the law will come after him and punish him. Wherefore, he is the loser anyway. My servants will punish your uncle and return to your father his money and possessions. The police do not see the spiritual servants and do not believe in their existence, and this makes our work safe and easy. Do you see these spiritual slaves?" "Not at all. How do you communicate with them?" "Through my spiritual leader Daldoom." Then the girl looked at Daldoom for a while and realized that he didn't look like an ordinary human. She said, "Is this Daldoom a human being or a demon?" Mr. Daldoom felt much offended and then opened his mouth angrily and exclaimed, "I think I am something between a human being and an evil spirit, or perhaps the devil himself has taken human form, and if you doubt what I claim, I can at once prove it." After uttering those obscene words, the specter of death stepped forward towards the culprit and was about to carry out his threat against her. Hajj Muhammad shouted, "Please control your anger, Mr. Daldoom," when he saw the black bag about to attack the beautiful girl. His angry words forced the brave girl to retract her daring question and beg him to pardon her. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Daldoom. I didn't mean to offend you. I just wanted to clear my doubts. So, I beg your pardon, Mr. Daldoom, my dear. Please forgive me, sir. I'm willing to kiss your hands and feet if it will make you forgive me. I am also ready to apologize to you on my knees." Then the Virgin of Heaven fell to her knees and raised her hands, begging the sack of darkness to forgive her. Either he was affected by her tears and pleas, or her many words of apology had touched his heart of stone and turned him from the demon of death into a black angel of forgiveness, or only God knows. Mr. Daldoom, this so-called dark angel of love, changed his mind, stepped back, and dropped his fists. Those apologetic words finally calmed the shadow of death and restored a measure of peace to the room. Then Mr. Daldoom said, "My dear sister, please choose another number for your cousin." This time, the mighty witch doctor Hajj Muhammad felt very confused and frightened when he heard Daldum address one of his female visitors as his sister. For him, everything that day was unusual and unnatural. He saw with his own small red eyes and heard with his big black ears the unbelievable that very morning. I chose number 13 for my ex-boyfriend. What is his name? Mr. Daldum asked. Walid Hassan Wad Al-Khair. The scary black creature shouted very loudly. Walid Hassan Wad Al-Khair number 13. By the way, Hajj Muhammad said to the brave girl, what is your name? My name is Nada Sala Wad Al-Khair. Nada is a beautiful name. You look like the dew of heaven just as your name means. Thank you, sir, said the pretty girl, smiling. Excuse me, sir, said the sweet Princess Nada. What will Walid's punishment be? Madness. Your ex-lover Walid will be mad forever, shouted the witch doctor. Thousands of evil demons will dwell in his body. They'll make him run around the streets and sleep on top of trash dumpsters at night. When people see him, they will run away from him. Even animals would be afraid of him. He will eat rubbish from garbage containers and drink stagnant, filthy water out of the gutter. His body and clothes would smell like a decomposing dead corpse. When you see him, you can't recognize him. He will grow his hair, nails, and beard. His clothes will be torn to pieces. He urinates and defecates in his clothes. It is a cruel and inhuman punishment. How can I bear to see my ex-boyfriend in such a miserable state? Nada, we did not choose the punishment, but you chose it. Besides, the number itself shows us what kind of punishment a person deserves for the wrong he has committed against our visitor. Can I change the number? You can't, said Mr. Daldum with a serious face. What you have to do now is to bring us something familiar for your uncle and cousin. What is that? An old shoe, a handkerchief, or any piece of clothing that belonged to your uncle or cousin. Why do you want that, Mr. Daldum? For our spiritual evil servants to find your uncle and cousin. But this kind of punishment will not solve my problem. What can I do to solve the problem of my illegal pregnancy? Hajj Muhammad said, don't worry about your pregnancy problem. When you bring the familiar things, please come back alone. Never bring up your blind father again. I'll give you something to drink. It will lead to the abortion of the illegal fetus from your womb. It will make you sleep for an hour or two in my own room. When you wake up, you'll be a virgin again. Your pussy will be closed just like the day your mother gave birth to you. You will become a virgin like the Huraya of Jannat al-Firdaus. How much money do we have to pay you for all your services to us? Don't worry about money now. Whatever amount you paid Bayad when you came, we will accept it, but you will be asked for the full amount when the work is done by my spiritual servants. But when you come to pay the rest of the amount, you must pay 10 times what you gave today. Suppose if we don't get back to you after the work is done, what will you do to get the full amount? My beautiful Princess Nada, sometimes you are cute and naughty, and sometimes you talk like a police inspector or detective. You are a very strange girl. I can't understand you. I just want to satisfy my curiosity. If you fail to return to me, then the punishments of your uncle and cousin will be carried out on you and your father by my invisible evil servants. Do you have some examples of people being killed by your wicked servants or made mad by your demons? I have many more, but for your sake I will mention 2 famous examples. The first example is the 4th wife of the wealthy businessman, Mr. Osman al-Tayyib. Her name was Rasha, and she died during giving birth to her firstborn. She was killed when she was 13 years old. My evil servants made her swallow a lot of tablets and pills at night. When morning came, they found her dead and gone forever. The hospital staff informed the police authority of the cause of her death as having committed suicide. The second example is the madman Sador. He is known as a madman, but in reality he is possessed by my evil spirits. Thousands of them torture him day and night until he dies in the streets like a stray dog. Before he was controlled by those thousands of my demons, he used to be a very handsome teacher in the biggest school in the city. He is a university graduate. But today he is the most dangerous madman in town. Even the mental hospital staff in Khartoum City were afraid to keep him in their health facility. He will remain homeless and wander the streets of the city until he breathes his last like a stray dog infested with rabies. How many demons do you have under your control? They are countless in number. They are more in number than people in the city. I could send thousands of them to everyone in many cities in Sudan, and there would still be a lot of them. How do you catch these demons? I inherited them from my father inherited them from his father, and so on. Don't ask me how my great-grandfather got them, I don't know. Have you ever used humans to do your evil work? Yes, in a limited way only. For example, they make erasers and vaporizers. What are these? They are verses from the Holy Quran written on wooden slates and folded papers. Visitors are supposed to drink the ashtray mahaya, burn the incense bukhara, and smell its smoke. But my evil demons do other dangerous things. Can I join your business in black magic? All this time, the lustful witch doctor's hands wandered all over the sexy body of the beautiful virgin of paradise Nada. He started with the cheeks and went down to the waist, then one of his hands moved to the big ass of the sexy girl and started caressing it with lust. When the lovely girl remained unaffected or interested, his other hand extended to one of the virgin's breasts and grabbed it. However, Nada did not refuse. Then his big hands began to caress her breasts. When those sexual touches didn't drive the girl away from the notorious womanizer's hands or drag herself away, the lustful sorcerer decided to make his final move. In the blink of an eye, his right hand grabbed the girl's short dress and wrapped it up to her waist. At the same time, his left hand grabbed her small red underwear and removed it from her private parts. The madman concluded that the girl's father is not only blind, but also deaf and dumb. Wherefore, he knew and understood that no one would save his lovely daughter from him. Before Nada could do anything, the witch doctor pushed her down and straddled her body. He removed his wolf's hood and exposed his fully erect penis, which is standing like a big rifle ready to fire its bullets on the near target. Then he started by forcibly inserting his large cock inside the sexy girl's small pussy. When Nada realizes that the evil magician has begun to rape her, she overcomes her sleep. She felt his big dick completely inserted inside her small pussy. It gave her a terrible pain in her cunt. As a result, she started screaming for help. Her loud screams not only made her father wake up from his slumber, but also brought many visitors into the unclean businessman's private room. Among the visitors is Shams al-Din. He is the same famous journalist who is covering the recent kidnapping and rape of the first innocent girl, Mona Salah al-Din. Once inside, he turns on his camera and begins filming the still-in-progress rape crime. The notorious womanizer Hajj Muhammad was completely possessed by demonic lust, and nothing could ease his sexual madness except the rape of the lovely girl in front of her father. While he was involved in the rape, he felt someone's strong hand hit him on the head. He looked up to see who hit him. He saw the father's face with a gun in his hand. His dark glasses no longer covered his eyes. Instead, his eyes filled with anger and determination. Then the angry father shouted at the rapist, "Any movement, I will shoot you in the head." "Who are you?" shouted Hajj Muhammad. The father said, "I am the police inspector Yasin. You are under arrest." "You are under arrest for rape and misleading," shouted Inspector Yasin. The evil rapist was amazed and frightened when he discovered that his private room was full of his visitors and workers. More than 50 people watched him rape the innocent girl. When the evil witch doctor was forced to his feet, everyone saw his penis fully erect and standing like the cannon of Ramadan. Even his victim became half naked and her dress was rolled up to her waist and she was without her underwear. Everybody saw her pussy was covered with black pubic hair. The media reporter Shams al-Din took many pictures of the rape. In fact, the famous journalist was planted by Police Inspector Yasin among the visitors in order to meet some of them and cover up the arrest of the great fraudster, the witch doctor Hajj Muhammad. They came ready to arrest him for deceiving people and stealing their money, but the sex freak gave them more than they came for. He raped the first innocent girl in front of the Police Inspector Yasin. His evil deed was witnessed by more than 50 people. On that very morning, the mastermind of the two evil marriage plots, Hajj Muhammad, was arrested along with his workers. After the rapist and impostor were tied up, Inspector Yasin chased al-Doom, who looked very terrifying and dangerous. The policeman who came in plain clothes and also sat in the waiting room along with Inspector Yasin searched the whole house inside and out, but they could not find Daldum. It was as if the black shadow of darkness had transformed itself into a cloud of smoke, rose into the air, and disappeared from the land of mortals forever. Chapter 30. Failed Plan of the Friends. The other two evil fugitives, the imam of the largest mosque in the city of Gadaref, Maulana Sheikh Marzouk, and the famous senior politician, Mr. Majub al-Hilali, also decided to leave the boring village Dalsa and its naive inhabitants and follow in the footsteps of their partner in crime, Hajj Muhammad, and return to their beautiful homes. It was Mr. Majub al-Hilali who suggested leaving the naive villagers and returning to the civilized townspeople. At first, Maulana Sheikh Marzouk rejected the idea and preferred to spend more days before coming out of their safe hiding place. But when the politician insisted that he would return on his own, Imam al-Mubarak bowed to pressure. Actually, the politician said that he misses his favorite TV series, and since there's not a single TV in the whole village, he decided to go home that day and watch his favorite show. Maulana agreed to accompany his friend, but made a proposal. They must read the morning newspapers, and if nothing is said of their involvement in the crime of their arrested friend, the old man, they can say goodbye to their kindly hospitable host and catch the city bus and go home. Before sharing their hearts with the village chief, the two fugitives sent the same man who had brought the newspapers the day before to bring today's newspapers. The messenger went and came back in less than half an hour. But instead of handing over the newspapers to the respected guests, he went straight and handed them over to the chief of his village. When the imam of the village mosque opened the first folio and saw the first page, his face turned from friendly to angry to hostile to demonic until he became monstrous and very ugly. He began reading the newspaper silently, his hands trembling and his body sweating like he had suddenly entered a hot steam bath. By then the hearts of the two fugitives had almost stopped and their bodies were sweating and shaking in sheer terror. They concluded that the newspaper revealed their involvement in kidnapping and bribery crimes. Suddenly the angry imam stopped reading, turned his ugly face and shouted at his frightened guests, "Who are you people?" The virtuous Maulana replied in a low voice, "We are human beings." "We are good citizens," said the great politician. "You two evil men are charlatans and usurpers." Then the very angry chief of the village Dalsa threw the two newspapers in their faces and ordered them to read them. The two fugitives took the newspapers, looked at the front pages, and witnessed the unbelievable. If they saw the devil appear before their eyes with his black horns on his head, they would not be so afraid. The newspapers showed their friend Hajj Muhammad standing naked, his penis fully erect, like a cannon ready to fire, and under him a beautiful teenager falling on her back while she was half naked. The girl's hairy pussy was also shown. Hajj Muhammad, the man of clean business, was arrested by Police Inspector Yasin. More than 50 people witnessed the witch doctor while he was committing haram and immorality with a 16-year-old girl in his house. The police authority considered the crime committed by him as serious rape. Both frightened friends, the religious cleric and political leader, decided not to read any more because what they saw told them everything. Therefore, they both got rid of the newspapers as if they carried dangerous infectious diseases, such as the coronavirus. Then they looked at the village chief and waited for him to pass judgment on them. One expected the enraged chieftain to summon the villagers and order them to throw stones at them and stone them to death for being crooks and rapists, while the other fugitive looked forward to the death penalty of beheading by double-edged swords. Yet the angry village head did none of this. He only ordered them to leave the holy ground of his village Dalsa immediately, or else he would tell his subjects to hang them to death or have his men cut off their heads by axes. The angry chief also swore to God and the divorce of his 4 wives that he would not allow them to travel in the village bus. The 3 had come to his village on foot and so had to leave on foot. Fearing that the outraged chief would change his mind and order the villagers to beat them to death and then burn their bodies, the 2 fleeing fugitives fled the village Dalsa as if they were being pursued by an angry mob of Muslim terrorists. Not only did they leave behind the angry village chief and his naive subjects, But they also forgot the 10 billion Sudanese pounds of the imprisoned rapist, the old man Mr. Osman al-Taib. It was the clever Sudanese lawyer Salah who came up with the idea to ambush and trap the mastermind who hatched the two evil plots of the so-called halal Islamic marriages of innocent sisters Intisar and Firdaus. Unfortunately, the plan did not work as he expected, and the first innocent girl, Mona, was raped again by the evil witch doctor, Hajj Muhammad. Mona told the friends that the evil wizard had used his power of black magic and hypnotized her and put Police Inspector Yasin to sleep too. The last thing she remembered is asking the notorious womanizer Hajj Muhammad if she could join his work. After that, she does not know what happened to her except that she suddenly awakens from the effect of hypnosis and finds the evil man climbing over her body while he was brutally raping her. Similarly, Inspector Yasin made the same allegation that he fell into a long coma and could not wake up from it until Mona screamed for help and his undercover policeman, the journalist, and other visitors rushed to rescue her. Now the big question. That's why the friends agreed to devise a risky plan that caused the first innocent girl Mona to be raped again by another human beast. She was the same victim who was kidnapped and brutally gang-raped by Al-Wash and his gang. Friends had already extracted Hajj Muhammad's recorded confession that he was the mastermind of two evil plots. They did it through Frida, who played the beautiful and sexy girl Saham. Indeed, friends were forced to draw such a dangerous trap. After the two evil criminals, the old man Al-Sayed Osman al-Taib and the magician Omar Ibrahim Mustafa Jaber, went behind bars, the friends decided to file an official complaint against the conspirators. Before doing so, Salah, as a newly established barrister, believes it would be wise to seek the advice of a senior attorney. The senior lawyer told him that the recorded confession of Hajj Muhammad might not be admissible in court if the other suspected men denied their involvement in the plots to the so-called social counselor. Salah learned that the Sharia court had already dealt with the matter and issued its ruling in favor of Mr. Osman al-Taib and his gang. Accordingly, the case can be dismissed by the High Court if the suspects present the same evidence they submitted to the Sharia court. Therefore, lawyer Salah came up with the idea of seducing Hajj Muhammad again. The main objective was to prove that he is a public illusionist who uses black magic to achieve his evil schemes and deceive people. The friends knew they couldn't send Frida back because she had already gone to him and seduced him and thus elicited from him what he admitted in tape: he was the mastermind of the two sham marriages. They also knew that they could not send Intisar because Hajj Muhammad had seen her in the Sharia court and most likely knew that she was the girl who married Hassan Majub al-Halali against her consent. Finally, when no other girl could be found, the first innocent girl Mona volunteered to play the attractive and sexy maiden of heaven. Badriya and Farida, who had visited Hajj Muhammad's house before, told Mona about the fearsome, demonic man Daldum. They gave her a full description of the dark sack of death and what his primary duty was in black magic. They told her not to be afraid of him when he appeared before her eyes. They said further to her that he would not harm the visitors of the witch doctor, Hajj Muhammad. He is supposed to act as a liaison between the great wizard and his unseen demons. So, when he appears before her eyes, she should not be afraid of him. They knew the witch doctor uses him to scare his female visitors so that he could manipulate and seduce them sexually. After that, the friends shared their brilliant plan with journalist Shams el-Din. The enterprising journalist immediately accepted the plan and agreed to play his part in it. At first, the friends wanted the journalist to play the role of the blind father, but he came up with a different proposal. According to him, the best person to play the role of the blind father is Inspector Yasin. The famous journalist Shamsuddin and Inspector Yasin become close friends after the former bestowed upon the latter the title of the Great Worthy Police Inspector and Greatest Man in Law Enforcement. So, Police Inspector Yasin agreed to the friends' plan, especially after seeing that such a role will increase his greatness when he arrests the famous witch doctor who uses black magic to deceive the good citizens of the city and steal their money. After that, the blind father and his daughter arrived an hour before Hajj Muhammad returned from the village Dalsa to his residence in the city. The blind father and his beautiful and sexy daughter were the first visitors that day. 15 minutes after their arrival, 5 plainclothes policemen, along with journalist Shams el-Din, arrived at the house of the man of unclean business. They are all recorded as visitors who have come to seek justice from the man of power and greatness, the compassionate witch doctor. Unfortunately, as we mentioned, the plan did not work out well, and the notorious womanizer raped the first innocent girl Mona in front of the police inspector, Yasin. However, the unclean businessman was arrested on more serious charges than those related to the crimes of Al-Waj and his gang, the evil old man Mr. Osman Al-Tayyib, and the sixth criminal, the magician Omar. At the police headquarters, the Gedaref City Police drafted a long list of the charge sheet of heinous crimes against the fraudster and the rapist of the innocent girl. He was accused of being caught in the act of rape, black magic, public deception, hypnotizing male visitors and beautiful teenage female visitors, and raping their beautiful daughters in front of them.